we had declared independence from New London, renamed Outpost 11 Bly's Folly, and proved through action that we valued hot springs, a reliable source of food, and one of those who could help us against any punitive expeditions. Straddle carriers would make things even easier for the workers of the army warehouse. Well, military warehouse, whatever you want to call it, that's what it is. It's a place where there's an abundance of steel and steam cores. Steel having the highest priority, at least right now. It was worse than we thought. There was an epidemic in New London. One that the leader of it seemed ill-equipped to deal with. Had he abandoned his people that easily? Was he that negligent? Or did he just not care? How bad must their medical facilities be since I left? If they are unable to deal with it. What was the purpose of this camp isolated from New London? Was it like that camp around Tesla City? To leave those within it to die? Had he not learned the lessons of Tesla City? Evidently not, because he was doomed to repeat them. I find it difficult to know what to be disgusted about more. That Tesla City did that, or that he made the same mistakes. I also received a note of thanks for providing the children with education here. I can only hope that I had an opportunity to rebuild what's incompetence was destroying. Oh yes, the infirmary is being researched, as that would need to be constructed eventually. Improvements were made, improvements were being made. We requested more food from them. They were willing to accommodate us, as long as we continued to help them. Which meant that standard meals could be made. Which should please the people, certainly more than eating soup. As for the next law to be signed, that would be a little later. Although I had an idea of what to have them work on. Or rather, right into law.
Work's over. Rest your weary bones.
The people of Hot Springs might not have wanted medical facilities, considering their current capabilities more than enough. But I thought it best not to take that chance. It's better to be over-prepared than under-prepared. Because then there would be a buffer against things like sickness or injury. As what if their current method of treatments failed them? What would they have to fall back on? This would require diplomacy. Engineers were sent along with the prerequisite supplies to Hot Springs, and one of the scout parties encountered a obstacle that they needed to go around. They found a vehicle that could be salvaged for materials. They went towards that next. I had this feeling that an infirmary would be needed sooner than I thought. And so far, had divided Bly's Folly into specific districts. The workshop district, the medical district, the residential district. As for the industrial facilities, they were more scattered. More so due to necessity rather than choice, because the coal seam couldn't be moved. As for the coal thumper, those could be built close to where the workers were living. Automatic prototyping would need more wood. After that, it would depend on what could be afforded and what was needed most at the time. And what was needed most by this point was a steam core. The ice caverns had food and wood, along with the remains of an animal attack. Some station ruins looked promising, so they were investigated next. A sawmill construction was delayed due to, well, letting the workers rest before their next shift. Because unlike the current leader of New London, I understood the possibility that people could be worked to death. And with the temperature growing hotter, it was decided that heating could be shut off for at least until the temperature decreased once more, creating a huge surplus for the inhabitants of Bly's Folly. Possibly for trade that, well, for others that might need it. Coal was not something that Hot Springs apparently needed, because the warmth that the hot springs themselves provided seemed more than enough for them.
Good day, people. Time to get busy.
New London's situation might be grave. And that would imply that their threats of punitive expeditions were hollow indeed, as they could barely deal with their own, never mind us. The lost rover had been reached, and more steel was gathered. There was another location to investigate. A larger wreck that might provide additional materials that Bly's folly could use. With a steam core available, the pumps of hot springs could be renovated. And the warehouse switched over to gathering steel. Which would be something that would please that settlement greatly. Because it would likely provide them with more food production capabilities. And fulfill their, well, requirements. As for, well, more helping hands, they couldn't be spared by this point. Well, for now at least, as we still needed some workers to gather wood. But once there was a reduced need for that, well, they could be sent over to where they were most needed. with 2 sawmills, gathering what was needed. And after all available technologies could be developed, the question was what to develop. That was a tough decision. And it was decided to improve the gathering post's insulation. Because that would lead to more efficient gathering techniques. As for what to sign into law next, of course it would be the fighting arena. The people were in need of entertainment. Although, for a time I forgot how the fighting arenas worked. The station ruins had little value, and in the distance was Winterhome. I think we've covered that quite considerably. A detailed account of the final days of Winterhome. That was covered in the accounts that I titled The Fall of Winterhome. As for why that generator was defective, that was covered in the account the last autumn. Where it was unlikely that it would have made a difference if the overseer of Site 113, now known as New Liverpool, took the parts for himself or not, as the end result would have been the same. But he didn't know that at the time, and he was not too happy with the news that those parts never reached their destination. A trailer was found. An unpleasant reminder that not all dreadnoughts made it. I hoped it wasn't from the one that escaped Winterhome. The steel bridge was next to be investigated. We could only hope that the news from that was more palatable. The law for the fighting arena was signed and the fighting arena built, although I did make one catastrophic flaw, or rather created one. The fighting arena works best if it's near the residential districts. That's what I found. And so I decided to correct that mistake. Along with a brazier to provide some heat, as it lacked insulation. I questioned why it shouldn't have insulation, because although the physical activity would have been enough to warm some people up, even that would not offset the cold temperatures. The heaters didn't need to be turned on completely. At least not all of them that were needed, because that level of, or rather that amount of cold would not arrive until another couple of days. home. An inept leader only increased the speed of its destruction. The last leader helped delay it, long enough to save what he could. The children we found later being the other survivors. That scout party travelled to the children's mine. Well, it was a mine with children in it, so that was as good a name for that place as any. It was at least a possibility of another settlement. There was still much to do for the settlement of Hot Springs. But I was sure that it could be dealt with soon enough for them to be ready for New London, and also to help us to be ready.